When we think of gangsters, we imagine figures drenched in power, crime, and unimaginable wealth. But among them, one name stands above all in sheer financial dominance. Throughout history, the criminal underworld has produced legendary figures who built multi-billion-dollar empires, rivaling the fortunes of corporate titans. But who is the richest gangster of all time? Today, we take a deep dive into the financial empire of the wealthiest criminal mastermind the world has ever seen. From drug lords to mob bosses, these figures not only controlled the underworld, but shaped entire economies, moving wealth that rivaled legitimate billionaires. Al Capone, the original king of crime. Al Capone, also known as Scarface, was the face of organized crime in the 1920s and 1930s. His criminal empire was built on bootlegging alcohol, illegal gambling, and extortion, raking in an estimated $100 million per year, which, adjusted for inflation, would be worth over $1.5 billion today. Capone controlled Chicago's underworld with an iron fist, bribing police officers, judges, and even politicians to keep his operations running smoothly. His wealth wasn't just in money. He had mansions, luxury cars, and hidden vaults filled with cash. Despite his vast wealth, his downfall came from an unexpected source: tax evasion. The US government couldn't tie him directly to his crimes, but proved he wasn't paying taxes on his illicit earnings. He was sentenced to 11 years in prison, and by the time he was released, his empire had crumbled. Capone's wealth was staggering for his time, but in the world of crime, he was just the beginning. Pablo Escobar, the billionaire drug lord. When talking about the richest criminals, Pablo Escobar is the first name that comes to mind. Known as the king of cocaine, Escobar's Medellin cartel controlled 80% of the world's cocaine trade in the 1980s. At the height of his power, his estimated net worth was between $30 billion and $50 billion, making him one of the richest people on the planet at the time. Escobar's cartel was smuggling 15 tons of cocaine into the US every single day, generating $420 million per week, an unimaginable amount of money. His wealth was so massive that he literally ran out of places to hide his cash. He buried money in fields, warehouses, and even abandoned houses. It's estimated that rats ate over $1 billion of his hidden cash every year. Escobar built his own private zoo, owned hundreds of luxury homes, and even offered to pay off Colombia's national debt in exchange for amnesty. He was so powerful that he built his own prison called La Catedral, where he lived in luxury while technically serving a sentence. Despite his immense power, Escobar's reign ended violently. After years of being hunted, he was finally killed in a shootout in 1993. His cartel collapsed, but his wealth remains legendary. Dawood Ibrahim, the invisible billionaire. While Pablo Escobar was the most well-known gangster, Dawood Ibrahim is one of the most elusive. As the leader of D Company, a global criminal syndicate, Ibrahim has been involved in drug trafficking, arms smuggling, real estate, and betting rings. With an estimated fortune of $6.7 billion, Ibrahim operates in secrecy, reportedly living under protection in Pakistan. Unlike Escobar, he has avoided direct confrontations with law enforcement and continues to expand his financial empire globally. He has investments in the Middle East, Asia, and even parts of Africa, making him one of the most financially diversified criminals in history. Despite his global influence, authorities have never managed to capture him. Meyer Lansky, the criminal financial genius. Meyer Lansky wasn't a violent gangster like Escobar or Capone. Instead, he was a financial mastermind who handled billions of dollars for the mafia. As the architect of modern money laundering, he helped the mafia move and clean illicit money through offshore bank accounts and international casinos. At the peak of his power, Lansky controlled an estimated $300 million, worth over $8 billion today. Unlike other crime lords who died violently, having outmaneuvered law enforcement his entire life. El Chapo, the New Age drug lord. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was once the most powerful drug trafficker in the world. As the head of the Sinaloa cartel, he controlled a criminal empire worth an estimated $14 billion. El Chapo's operations were built on smuggling cocaine, heroin, meth, and fentanyl across the US-Mexico border using tunnels, submarines, and even commercial flights. His cartel's wealth was so vast that he could pay off entire police departments, government officials, and military personnel to keep his network running. Despite being arrested multiple times, El Chapo escaped from high-security prisons twice, further proving his power. However, his luck ran out in 2016 when he was finally extradited to the US and sentenced to life in prison. Even though he is behind bars, the Sinaloa cartel remains one of the most profitable criminal organizations in history. Amado Carrillo Fuentes, the Lord of the Skies. While Escobar was making headlines, Amado Carrillo Fuentes was quietly amassing one of the largest fortunes in cartel history. Known as the Lord of the Skies, Fuentes revolutionized drug trafficking by using a fleet of private jets to transport cocaine. At his peak, Fuentes had an an estimated net worth of $25 billion, making him wealthier than El Chapo, Capone, and even some billionaires in legitimate industries. He invested heavily in real estate, banks, and money laundering businesses, ensuring his wealth was deeply embedded in the global economy. However, his greed for power and money led to his downfall. In 1997, he underwent plastic surgery to change his appearance, but died due to complications. To this day, many believe his death was faked, and his wealth remains hidden across banks, businesses, and offshore accounts. Griselda Blanco, the Black Widow of the drug trade. While most of the richest gangsters in history were men, Griselda Blanco, also known as the Black Widow, proved that a woman could be just as ruthless and financially dominant in the underworld. Blanco was a pioneer in the cocaine trade, building an empire that reportedly earned her over $2 billion during her reign in the 1970s and 1980s. She was one of the masterminds behind the Miami drug war, responsible for bringing in thousands of kilograms of cocaine into the U.S. each month. She operated with extreme violence, reportedly orchestrating over 200 murders to maintain control over her business. Unlike Escobar and El Chapo, she wasn't just a trafficker, she was a strategic innovator, creating new smuggling techniques that allowed drugs to pass undetected through airports and cargo shipments. Despite being arrested in 1985 and serving nearly 2 decades in prison, her influence remained strong even after her release. Blanco's story ended violently in 2012 when she was assassinated in Colombia, but her wealth and criminal innovations left a lasting legacy in the drug trade. Semion Mogilevich, the billionaire boss of the Russian mafia. While Escobar and El Chapo built their empires through drugs, Semion Mogilevich made his fortune through financial crime, arms smuggling, and international fraud schemes. Often referred to as the brain of the Russian mafia, Mogilevich is estimated to have a net worth of $10 billion, making him one of the richest gangsters to have ever lived. Unlike traditional crime bosses who relied on violence, Mogilevich built a criminal empire using white-collar tactics, laundering billions through banks, shell companies, and international investments. He was involved in stock fraud, tax evasion, and even working with corrupt governments to further his reach. Despite being one of the FBI's most wanted criminals, he has managed to evade capture for decades, using his political connections to remain protected. He is believed to be living in Russia under government protection, making him one of the few gangsters who has successfully kept his fortune and his freedom. Who is the richest gangster of all time? After analyzing these criminal titans, who truly holds the title of the richest gangster of all time? While Pablo Escobar's net worth peaked at around $50 billion, Amado Carrillo Fuentes had a fortune that may have exceeded $25 billion, and El Chapo controlled a $14 billion empire. However, the richest gangster in history isn't just one person, it's a collective. The Sinaloa cartel, Medellin cartel, and criminal syndicates like D Company have generated hundreds of billions of dollars over decades, making them the most profitable criminal enterprises in history. The criminal billionaires of the underworld. From the brutal drug lords of Latin America to the financial masterminds of the Russian mafia, these criminals have built empires that rival legitimate billionaires. Their fortunes have shaped economies, corrupted governments, and left an undeniable impact on the world. While many have fallen, their wealth often outlives them, hidden in offshore accounts, secret investments, and businesses that still operate today. The world's richest gangsters didn't just accumulate wealth, they built financial dynasties that continue to influence the world from the shadows. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of criminal billionaires, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Baruch Wealth for more eye-opening stories about wealth, power, and crime.